Hi and welcome everyone to Decode the Future 2022. My name is Gonzalo Garcia and I'm the CMO here at GfK, and I'm joined by an amazing lineup of speakers today. After the success of last year's event, it is great to see again so many familiar brands and clients among the audience, and also some new ones, so it promises to be a great session. Today's event is all about the type of bold leadership that the ongoing uncertainty demands. I remember having a chat last year with another London-based CMO about the fact that COVID's disruption made Brexit look like a walk in the park. And let's face it, Brexit was very disruptive. But we were very confident at that time that come 2022, that disruption will be behind us. And boy, we got it wrong. Things aren't getting any easier or less complex. We still see massive impact of COVID with lockdowns in China, for example, affecting supply chains again. The conflict in Ukraine and the devastating effect it's having on, first and foremost, the lives of people, of course, but also in the global markets. Inflation levels through the roof, despite interest rates being raised by many central banks and failing to keep it under control. Job vacancies in some of the G20 at their highest in the last 10, 20 years. And certainly, last time I checked, the UK wasn't back in the European Union. As a result, the outlook for 2022 isn't one of massive growth for most of consumer markets and product categories. If we look at technical consumer goods, for example, a sector that enjoyed significant growth in 2021, has been relatively flat year to date, and we're forecasting limited growth for the full 2022, with some markets even decreasing slightly. Consumer confidence remains very volatile this year, with high level of uncertainty among consumers on their own economic future. If you consider all these factors, driving your revenue growth and increasing market share is going to come at a significant price and with strong competition from most firms. Now, it is not all doom and gloom, and we're not here to get you guys depressed. Let me share this article, for example, from McKinsey, which I particularly liked and talks about the opportunity for CEOs and leaders to take bold actions in the face of this unprecedented inflation to take their organizations ahead of the pack. I highly recommend reading it. And I personally think this line of thought doesn't apply only to inflation as a topic, and it is not limited to CEOs, but also all of us, global and regional leaders, whether we come from marketing, sales, innovation, etc. Because despite these challenges I've mentioned, we have seen a number of brands stand out from the crowd and really delight their consumers and achieve sustainable growth, even in these turbulent times. These examples of successful leadership have a few things in common. Most of them are purpose-driven brands. They have a very data-centric culture that helps them take better, faster, and more frequent decisions. And they don't shy away from changing direction as many times as needed, whether it is adopting tactical promotions or more strategic changes to their product innovation. They pivot at speed, and they do it with confidence because they look at market data, consumer data, brand data, data that they can trust, and they extract the right insights to support the decisions. If you look at that data right now, you can see consumers are looking for premium products and brands more than ever. You can see that sustainability this year continues to grow in importance, and it is almost becoming table stakes for many consumers. They also demand high performance, and they expect our products and experiences to be more simple. To help us read and react to these trends, I'm super excited to share this virtual stage with some of the brightest leaders from top brands, manufacturers, retailers, media, analysts, and tech firms who will share their experiences and hopefully inspire you. After me, we will welcome Omar Johnson. He's ex-CMO at Beats by Dre and former VP of Marketing at Apple. He brings his wealth of expertise to share how your business can make the right decisions based on audiences' emotional and functional needs. Thomas Husson, Principal Analyst at Forrester, will provide their perspective on changing consumer behavior in a post-COVID era and how to get ready for data centricity and hyper-localization in these disruptive times. Our very own GfK experts Gemma Maidment and Steph Haydock will illustrate how your organization can work smarter, put data at the center of decision-making, and use technology to extract valuable signal from all that noise with GfK Neuron. Following them, Greg Williams, editor-in-chief of Wired, and Jens Stromness, MD at Expert International, will discuss what it takes to be relevant and succeed, as well as the need to adapt at speed through enormous organizational and economic shifts. And finally, Tiffany Bova, Salesforce's growth and innovation evangelist, will tell us about the use of data to take better strategic decisions, the growth mindset, and everything we need to know about beating the competition. That's all from me now. I'll be back later. I hope you really enjoy the event. And without further ado, please welcome Omar Johnson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Johnson, and we're going to talk a little bit about marketing today. We're going to talk about authenticity. We're going to talk about emotion. We're going to talk about big ideas and how we got to big ideas with that authenticity and with that emotion. And lastly, we're going to talk about what I call the new rules of marketing. For all you B2B, B2C people out there, let's not worry about that today. Let's call it all B2H, business to human. It's how I tend to think about marketing and how I think the world works, right? So my story really quickly, right? From Brooklyn, New York, it's where I grew up. Learned a lot about listening, learned a lot about different cultures because we're all jammed together in a small space, right? But Brooklyn was what formed a lot of how I listen. Spent some time in college in Atlanta. Again, kid from the North going to the South, having to learn new behaviors, new ways of thinking, working, playing, and, fun part of my journey. And I was a biology major in college, right? So for all you career switchers out there, it works out, right? I still feel like biology is a part of what I'm doing in marketing today. I started with Coca-Cola, and again, traditional analytics around consumption. It's where I cut my teeth. I ended up going to get my MBA, and then spending time at Chips Ahoy at Kraft. So my favorite chocolate chip cookie, and, consumption there, 4 C's, 5 P's, you name it, velocities, basket sizes, we did it all, right? And then I spent a couple of years at Campbell Soup, where I got to work with Walmart. And again, all the tools, syndicated data tools that you use. And then we typically use agencies for the creative. Now, I ended up leaving Campbell's to go to where I thought I'd retire, which was Nike. And I got to work in US brand management, global brand management. I got to work across retail, digital, brand connections, which was digital and advertising brought together. I think I said PR, retail. I got to see the full stack of Nike. And along the way, I got to meet the guy in the front. His name is Jimmy Iovine, founded a company called Beats, and obviously became a great mentor to me and, hired me to lead marketing at Beats. And I'll never forget, as a funny story, when I first started, here's a view from my office, right? And I get a call from the guy in the front, Dre, and he's like, "What are we doing on my first week?" And I'm like, "I'm onboarding," right? And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm onboarding." I got a phone, I got a laptop, and there's a long, awkward silence. He says, "Again, what are we doing?" I said, "I'm onboarding." And there's an equally as long and even more awkward silence, right? So I realized onboarding is not going to work as an answer. He's like, "What are the ideas? What are we doing?" And I said, "I've got a few. They're not fully formed, but let me come back to you," right? I go back to look out my window and I'm like, I need to escape. I need to go back to Nike. Nike got me. They had insights. We talked to the athlete. But lo and behold, that story ended up going really well, right? The company, I was there from 2010 to 17. We grew from I was a third employee. We grew to about 600 people. We were 55% female, which when you look at the next number, that's how, right? When you think of going from 19 million to 2 billion in revenue in 4 years, you don't do that with a bunch of me and my friends, a bunch of bros, a bunch of any homogenous group. I don't think you do that. So much of that number was driven by the people. And we take anywhere from 91 to 97% of the category dollars every holiday. Like they didn't miss, right? And then we sold a company for $3 billion. Right? Sold it to Apple. I became a VP of marketing at Apple. I spent a couple of years there, enjoyed it, learned a lot about operations. But I had this crave to go and build how we built at Beats and build a team very similar. So I left and I created Opus. And I often get asked at Opus this idea of like creating modern brands and how do modern brands get created. But we were built to serve this question of how do you build great modern brands? And look, I often get a lot of questions around how you do it. And there's three critical components to me. There's people, there's storytelling, and there's product. And if I say which one's most important, I typically get a bunch of different answers, but the answer's pretty simple. And so it comes down to the same thing for me, which is people. Great people come up with great products and great stories, right? And great insights. And here's some people from the Opus team. Just going to give you a quick snapshot of who these people are. I mean, you'll see half women, half men. You'll see black, white, Asian, Hispanic. You'll see purple hair if it was in color. You'll see red hair. You'll see it all, right? And that's a big part of who we are. But like Karen's our head of brand development, but what it doesn't say is that Karen's from Jamaica, that Karen's a mom, that Karen's Jewish, that Karen's vegan, that Karen loves running, right? Those are the things that we encourage people in our team to bring to the office that really shape our ideas and our output. Sung Moon's from Seoul. Sung Moon loves to design, but also Sung Moon's a huge family guy. Sung Moon loves cars. Sung Moon loves NFTs. Sung Moon has all these in Sung Moon designs clothing, right? Not in his job description, but part of what he brings to the business. And then Eric, and I'm not going to go too much on Eric. I can keep going. The idea here is we encourage all these people to bring their full self to work. And it's been a big part of what's driven our growth as a business. So where I get the how question a lot, I think the more important and vital question is this thing we start with at Opus, which is why. How to do marketing is, there's so many things. The why is how you get to the authenticity and emotion. And there's two critical things to think about when you think about the why, right? There's hard data, which we all know, right? There's data, there's how we process it, and there are the insights we can derive from it. But we have this thing we call soft data and how we look at other things. Like, how does that team bring in their whole self see those insights and see that data, right? Through that lens and that filter of their whole self. How do you see it through the lens of purpose? Not purpose in function, but purpose in purpose, bigger purpose. What's the purpose of this product, this brand in the world, right? And as I share examples, please remember these things because they're all sort of come to life. The whole self, the purpose, and then lastly, this why, right? So I'm gonna show you a few pictures and we're gonna talk, right? So I'll show you this picture of red headphones, and I'd say, what are these? Now, if I were in person, you'd say red headphones, you'd say headphones, you'd say noise cancellation headphones, you'd say Beats headphones. All of those answers are right? But when you look at these women wearing these headphones, what you realize is that these headphones are a little bit more than Beats red headphones. And before I tell you what they are and how they're using them, let's just talk about Beats style ideas, right? That did get to that emotional authenticity. Headphones for us were noise blockers, not just airplane noise, my wife noise, my kids noise, my neighbor noise. I'm trying to study in a coffee shop noise, right? Those headphones were Christian Louboutin red. We've made headphones with Fendi and every brand you could imagine, right? We made them fashion accessories. We've also made headphones that were Union Jack style or German flag style or Brazilian flag style. We use those headphones to infuse pride and identity into those products. Best gift ever. If you listen to pop, rap, grime, Adele, headphones work as a great gift. Best gift ever, right? Free media generators. We generated billions of dollars of free media with those headphones. And to bring it full circle back to those amazing women you saw ahead of time, we learned that 22 to 25% of the time, women were using our headphones with no sound, no noise cancellation. They were using them as a signal to say, don't speak to me. I'm going to work. I know I look amazing. I want to block everything out. And they were using our headphones without the functionality they were designed for, but they were using the headphones. And as a company who cared so much about sound, we found ways to celebrate that. And that was just a sampling of kind of how we got to big ideas. And I'm going to take you down the journey of a few, but more importantly, I just want to take a quick pause and stop with this point around consumer journeys. Because the why is always there. But how do you understand things like, what are your consumers doing? Who are they doing it with? Where are they? When do they use your product? For its intended use? For other uses? How does your product help them? Help them express themselves. Not just help them functionally, but help them express themselves, help them identify with the world. How does it help them, right? And then this idea of why. Right? You're going to keep hearing me talk about why, and why, because I think it's the most important thing when it comes to marketing and building brands. So let's give you a quick example of how this works, right? So with the Olympics in London, we had a guy named Michael Phelps that I wanted to sign. I couldn't afford him. But in talking to him about the Olympics, I said, what do you love and what excites you about the Olympics? And he's like, well, I'm really excited about London, but I hate the Athlete Village. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, I hate sponsors being there, I hate fans being there, I hate media being there, my coaches are there. Our idea for Beats was to build a space exclusively for athletes. No fans, no media, no sponsors, and they came out in droves. Now, on the way out, we gave them a pair of headphones with, guess what? Pride and identity, their flag, right? This campaign was explosive, and I'll show you a quick video to show you what happened.
These headphones, they're very popular among the athletes here. Beats by Dr. Dre. I've got the UK version.
Athletes hanging out, warming up in the headphones. And
the rapper Dr. Dre sent groups of athletes special editions of his company's Beats headphones, some of which have been seen on competitors in the Aquatic Centre, where they drown out the noise.
So the next example I want to share is Straight Outta Compton. Straight Outta Compton was a function of a campaign that it was almost a mistake, because we were focused on selling headphones. As you can see, this campaign doesn't feature headphones. It features a point of view. But I heard Dr. Dre say at one moment in time, he named the album Straight Outta Compton because he wanted people to be proud of where they came from, which was Compton. And we took that idea, and a young kid on our team erases the word Compton and writes in Seoul, right? He was also from Korea. And that idea, we were like, oh, wow, stop the presses. That's the idea. Let people express their pride and identity. Let Beats be the company that allows them to express their pride and identity. And what you'll see in this video, it has very little to do with headphones, but this brand's purpose of giving people a voice and a platform. This became one of the biggest campaigns in the world. That's still running when I travel all over the world. And literally, not even featuring headphones, but all 100% what Beats was about. Check out the video.
In the summer of 2015, Universal Pictures partnered with Beats by Dre to promote Straight Outta Compton, the biopic movie of the headphone company's founding father and billionaire rap mogul, Dr. Dre, growing up in one of the most notorious neighborhoods in the world.
Tell them where you're from. Straight Outta Compton.
What Beats realized is this isn't just about Compton. Everyone is proud of where they're from. So we launched an integrated campaign that celebrated every city in the world, because we're all straight outta somewhere. Hashtag Straight Outta became a universal statement for everyone to rep their city.
So, I get this thing around culture all the time where a lot of brands, I realize they struggle with culture. And they struggle with it because we're always trying to measure the wrong things, right? So we're always navigating them towards how do you think about culture in very different ways. And the last thing I'll leave you with this idea of authenticity is this thing that we just built, right? It's called Ovis Intelligence. And what we do is we help brands turn their customers and everyday people into marketing assets. And we do that with this really interesting combination of social media, public domain data, syndicated data, e-commerce data, and surveys. And we have this thing called Opus Score, which a brand gets to go in and says, I want this audience that can spend this dollar, that can drive X conversion. And it scores individuals. And some are celebrities, some are individuals. There are different people who do this. But at the end of the day, we've used this idea and this methodology to platform everyone from a high school athlete to a celebrity who makes music to an international superstar. And what's amazing about it is it's been at the core of helping businesses understand culture and then find authentic ways into it, right? So something we're extremely proud of. And as I said, I mean, we've featured, if you have a follower, you have an Opus Score. And for us, it's been a big unlock into how do we teach brands authenticity, right? So again, you got your big why, and then we start helping with the who, right? So as I wrap up, I want to just walk you through a really quick framework for how to think about bigger ideas. There's the data we all see every day. There's how we process it to get to insights. But then there's how do we take the whole self, purpose, and add that why to get to bigger and bigger ideas. And this cycle has been truly revolutionary to me and this company in driving bigger and bigger ideas. So, as I wrap up, there's a few takeaways I want you to leave with. One, we always had a manifesto as a company which talked about our purpose of our product, our purpose as employees, the purpose of our company, right? We always applied that to our understanding of the customer journey. We listened as offense. We used listening as a weapon to find emotion and get to whys. But most importantly, and the last thing I want you all to understand as I wrap up here is it all kind of starts with you. You as the person have to catalyze this listening and this way of looking at the world and your way into emotion and authenticity. With that, I thank you for listening today, and I look forward to the next time we can see each other again. Cheers.
Hello everyone, and thanks to GfK for having me share Forrester's perspective on geopolitical disruption and why it will increasingly demand local trust. Forrester is an independent research and advisory firm, and my name is Thomas Husson. I am a VP and principal analyst. I'm part of our global CMO team and based in Paris in France. I'm 47 years old. And I'm lucky enough to never have experienced war. I remember when I was a teenager, I went to Berlin right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And at that time, I realized how the tension between the US and the Soviet Union were a part of people's mind. My mom was born in 1938. She remembers World War II. And in many parts of the world, unfortunately, there has been war in Asia, in Africa, and Latin America. In the developed world, there will increasingly be social, economic, political tensions. There was recently a report published by the United Intelligence Council about the fact that by 2035, the world will be increasingly fragmented. And we see this today with the situation in Ukraine. So are geopolitical tensions top of mind among business leaders, among CEOs? Well, the answer is a clear yes. We've asked them, as you can see on this chart, at the beginning of April 2022 and March, beginning of April 2022, what were the most disruptive factors that they're expecting for their businesses? Changing customer expectations is clearly number one. Very close to that, the climate change, especially in Europe. And there are other concerns around technology, especially, the importance of remote working that COVID-19 accelerated. Somehow the future of work has already started because of COVID-19. But if you look at geopolitical tensions, they also are part of the top 10 disruptive factors that CEOs and C-leaders care about. And this is especially true in Europe and in Asia. And I'm sure that if we were to run this survey again now, 6 weeks later after the Ukrainian conflict started, this would actually be much higher in the list. So, as we've seen, customer expectations and the fact that they're evolving because of the situation is top of mind among C-level executives, and especially among CMOs. Changing economic conditions is a strong concern. How much will inflation impact consumer behaviors? What matters to them is obviously the ability to recruit the right talent and to have budgets to execute their marketing plans. But the main challenge is actually around data, accessing the right consumer data, which is increasingly difficult in a cookie-less world and in an environment where regulations are tighter. But also the quality of the data they get access to is a growing concern. So I know I've shared a lot of data so far, but as you know, a picture is better than 1,000 words. So I just want to share this cartoon here because I think it tells the story about the disruptive waves that humanity will face moving forward. And yes, there are concerns around the looming recession and the consequences of the Ukrainian war. And it seems like when you look at this graphic and cartoon that, somehow maybe COVID-19 was not that big a deal in comparison to what's going to come next, especially the climate change wave and the risk of biodiversity collapse. And if we put this in perspective, especially the geopolitical tensions, we're likely to enter a looming technology Cold War, what we refer to at Forrester as a global splinternet. And this is not new, but this has accelerated in the past few years. When you look, for example, at the tensions around Huawei between China and the US, when you look at the semiconductor crisis in Taiwan, or when you look at the fact that some expect the Ukrainian war to somehow spell the end of globalization as we knew it. So there's strong concerns around this. But if you look at the technology side of things, some of the emerging technologies will also accelerate hyperlocalization. We see this with blockchain. We see this as well with 3D printing and additive manufacturing, which will bring production sites closer to consumption areas. Same thing with edge computing and architecture enabling more local operations, or even with, things like low-code platforms enabling more regional apps. But I don't really think the main challenge is around technology. Of course, in the years to come, these technologies will foster more hyper-localized business. But the consumer demand is even more important than that. We've seen this during the pandemic, where consumers were increasingly looking for and demanding local products, local content and services, caring about made in France, made in the US, made in India. And this is here to stay. What is relatively new, or at least accelerating, is the fact that consumers are increasingly looking for the values that brands express. And there is a growing demand for not just local products, but also concerns around, climate change, employees' income and wages, things like data privacy, giving back to the local community. And these elements are deeply rooted into local beliefs, values, social and cultural elements. The GfK data that you see on this graphic shows that increasingly this notion of internationalism and the open-mindedness, the curiosity of people has decreased over the past 2 years, which is a bit worrying in the sense that, people are less willing to seek information about other people, other cultures. And this is a clear sign, a worrying signal. So as a consequence of all these trends, we see more and more local brands emerge. Grab would be a good example. There are new local competitors. Grab has managed to become a super app, an app platform, because of its deep understanding of the Indonesian culture, which enabled them to kick Uber out from the country and increasingly from Southeast Asia. So the way we look at things moving forward is that we expect this fragmentation to increase in 3 phases. Between, I would say, now and 2023, the end of next year, we'll see increasingly consumers expect and consider that some of the tech titans, the likes of, Google and Amazon and Apple and Facebook, are somehow reviling nation states. They have a huge economic power. They have access to tons of consumer data. They have a massive role to play in how information is shared. They can even create currencies. And so this perception is really gonna increase in the months to come. But later on, we expect, let's say from 2023 to 2025, regulation to somehow funnel these tech titans and ask them to have a different kind of approach. We're seeing this already in China with the tighter regulation on Alibaba and the likes. We see this in Europe with the European Commission and the DMA and DSA regulation. Obviously, there will be intense lobbying from the digital platforms to, counter this regulation. But at the end of the day, we expect towards the end of the decade, firms to evolve and to morph into more multi-local businesses, meaning they will seek hyper-localization and will have a more regional and country level approach. The question is how? How do you make this happen? And I just want to share with you 4 recommendations that we see among firms that operate better at a local level. The first key element is to give local businesses trust and autonomy. More often than not, businesses that are run centrally from their headquarters, especially US firms, they don't really understand the local specificities. Like EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, this acronym highlights to me this notion of, EMEA as a monolithic region perceived from the US. The reality is that the Middle East is very different from Africa, and that within Europe, you have lots of different cultures and languages and currencies and regulation. If you look just at the Nordics, yes, there is a lot in common, but there's also lots of differences between Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and so on. There are few firms that are truly operating at a local level. And I really like the example of Schneider Electric. The CMO, Chris Leong, is based in Hong Kong. So is the CEO, Jean-Pascal Tricoire. And the chief digital officer is in Boston. And other executives and C-level executives are in Paris. So it's a truly, I would say, multi-local approach. What Chris Leong, the CMO, told me not that long ago is that within her own marketing leadership team, she has 10 different nationalities. And that whenever they decide to launch a campaign, a global campaign, it has to be vetted by 3 different countries. So that's an example of a firm giving autonomy and trust to local operations and having this truly global and local mindset. A second, I think, key approach is to really flex local operations and to have a new way of operating locally, to make sure that products and offerings are localized to specific demands from consumers at a local level, but also that the decisions are being made at a country level. A good example here would be from Danone. They launched at the end of last year this local first strategy, and they're willing to accelerate on that plan. A third way to think about this is to stop thinking of mobile as a sub-digital channel, but instead to think of mobile as a way to bridge online and offline worlds and to even enable better customer experiences. Starbucks is pretty good at that. Here you see this quote from the CEO of Starbucks explaining how it's all about creating a customer experience for human beings over coffee, and how they've leveraged the convenience of mobile ordering to, at the end of the day, bridge online and offline worlds. So that's a great example, and it's particularly true in Asia and in emerging countries in Africa, where mobile plays such a social role. Last but not least, I would definitely recommend you to invest massively in data, to turn this data into true insights and to leverage these insights to deliver more real-time personalized experiences. This is really what marketers have been struggling with over the past few years. But when you execute well on this is definitely a way to differentiate. And here, John Alverson from Mondelez International shared with me in an interview several months ago that Mondelez is doing this by leveraging its brand equity to create a dialogue with consumers, to better understand their needs, their behaviors, their attitudes. And this will be increasingly key moving forward. This notion of activating emotional content that resonates best with local needs. So just to wrap up here, the key takeaways I want to leave you with. The world is likely to get increasingly fragmented, and you need to prepare for it. These geopolitical tensions will increase moving forward. The way to deal with this is by really enabling more trust and autonomy to local operations and to prepare to morph into more multi-local businesses. I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a great conference. Thank you very much.
All right, hi everybody. Now, Steph and I have been spending a lot of time talking with you, our clients, and we have unearthed 3 approaches that you've been using to kind of successfully navigate fast-paced markets, and that's what we want to share with you today. So those are, for instance, the need to work smarter, to be able to gather your teams around one core strategy, and to really focus on your consumers. But before we jump into that, I think it's worth us taking a quick moment to introduce ourselves and also the position that GfK is coming from and why we have a voice to help you in this arena. So I'm Gemma, I'm the head of product propositions, and I'm joined today by Stephanie, our head of user experience. So as we said, we spend a lot of time with you, our clients, We hear your pain points and your priorities, and we're really excited to share what we've learned with you to help you make better decisions.
And so the bottom line is this: our markets continue to face high levels of disruption and pace of change, and an overwhelming amount of data. Our clients have been telling us that their teams simply don't have the time, or sometimes the training, to carry out the level of daily data analysis needed to really draw out those vital market insights for themselves. So our role is to do exactly that. We can revolutionize your team's access to market, consumer, and brand data so that they can make better decisions faster. The key lies in presenting our deep insights in a way that dramatically improves your team's ability to identify performance gaps and recommend changes at a glance. So with that context, let's look at the first focus area that we're seeing as becoming increasingly core, which is, as Gemma mentioned, equipping your teams to work smarter. Talking to our clients, we're continuing to hear about the level of change they face. This is everything from consumer behavior to new sales channels, compacted planning cycles, right through to internal disruption from churn in teams, and the need to compete with faster reaction times from competitors. So how do they, or how do you, react and compete in such a landscape?
This is a really great question. And now, to keep relevant, we all know that you need to give your teams data in the moment. But as Steph mentioned, this is really where that data overwhelm can really easily sneak in. So many of you are telling us that you just don't have time to really feel confident in the data that you're looking at, and that you're missing those critical signals that are hidden in the noise. We actually did a survey recently with Campaign Magazine. We found that 73% of marketers in Europe said they need to make better use of data. And 59% said they don't have enough time to do that. On top of that, 46% worry that they are missing early signs of either disruption or opportunity that's hidden in the data. Now, only a quarter felt that the data they have is presented in a way that really empowered them to make data-backed decisions at speed. So to work smarter, what they need is not pure data, but your teams need relevant insights from that data, and you need to put it directly in their hands in a way that gives them answers in seconds. They need almost the heavy lifting of daily analysis done for them, and the results presented in a visual, instantly understandable, and flexible formats that can highlight key recommendations tailored to them. So critically though, all of your teams need to make data-driven decisions, whether they're in product development like us, or marketing, sales, up to your C-suite. Working smarter means every team in your organization needs to have at their fingertips access to those data-enabled insights, and it needs to be in the moment. So what does that mean for you? It means that you need to reduce your silos. So you know where maybe there's one team that has access to information that another doesn't. This effectively slows down that cohesive decision-making. So this universal access, or data democratization, as we call it at GfK, ensures that the different teams within your organizations are driving decisions from a shared understanding and a shared ground truth.
Absolutely. So let's see some examples of how GfK Neuron can help your teams to work smarter and really increase that competitiveness. One question we know every team will have is, how is our brand doing by country and category, looking at that by share, revenue, units, over the last weeks or even quarters? We've brought this data together in a global summary. It's filterable by KPIs, allowing every team in your company to drill down on the same data. You're able to apply smart filters to segment or to rank by powerful sales metrics such as price index. Similarly, when we're thinking about competitor analysis, the product leaderboard shows all of your team's top 3 competitors by product. It includes quick and easy navigation so you can view those competitors and easily compare models. These tools help to give you that holistic overview where you can quickly see, as a team, where you need to focus your attention. Another key question might be, what do consumers think about my brand? What is our brand perception versus the competition? Here, we've got a screenshot from GfK Neuron showing you in a really easy to read way how your brand stacks up. Now, this is real data from real brands We've obviously obscured their names, but you can see how immediately the gaps jump out. So spotlighting sustainability as a real opportunity for this brand to take a lead position in an unchallenged space.
No, that's absolutely right, Steph. And when we really think about working smarter, it's about having these insights, whether it's brand insights or consumer insights, at your fingertips, ensuring that you can get them to the relevant people as quickly as possible to ensure you're making faster, data-informed decisions. Now, the other area that we are really hearing from you is how to gather all your teams in an organization around a single strategy. So this is about focusing your whole organization on achieving that one thing that will really have maximum effect over your overall performance, rather than kind of spreading your teams too thinly. So to do this, you need to be able to zoom seamlessly from a macro view, perhaps of your competitive landscape, down into those micro views at a product level to make all those kind of tactical decisions, and then go back up to macro level again to kind of check, okay, what impact is that having on my strategy? So at a macro view, you're looking at your brand's current position within the landscape. Which segments of the market are you strongest? Perhaps which ones are you weakest? Where could you, for example, maybe play to really push your premiumization strategy to have optimum effect? So from there, once you've decided that, then you can really drill down which markets or product portfolios aren't reaching their expected potential in this area and why. Or perhaps, how do your product specs measure up against the competitors? Or even running price simulations which deliver the optimal results. So from that drill down, looking at your tactics, you then need to return to your macro strategy view to see the likely outcome of each of those options on your overall performance and establish which actions will deliver maximum results.
And a key question that runs across this area is, where are the highest margins in my market? Which also plays directly to that premiumization macro trend, the drive amongst consumers towards purchasing fewer items, but being willing to buy at a higher end for the purchases that they do make. For that, we go to the revenue premium deep dive section within GfK Neuron Predict. This is an incredibly powerful proprietary calculation based on real transaction data. It groups peer competing products at a model level, so that we can look at all of the products within a category that have a similar competitive feature set. And we can see what customers' willingness to pay is. So on the screenshot here, on the bottom axis, we have willingness to pay at a unit level. And on the y-axis, how many units have sold. In just seconds, you can see which areas are generating the highest premium, which are the best models to promote, and what is the optimal price that your brand can command. You could then filter this by product, for example, looking at panel TVs in France. And you can see that consumers are willing to pay more for the top-selling brands. So this could be a great opportunity to take advantage of, particularly in a World Cup year.
So again, all of these examples that Steph has given is really about being able to identify that key focus area, the lever that's going to really give you the best chance of success, and doing that really well by gathering your teams around it, giving them the KPIs to be able to measure and benchmark it, and reducing the noise and getting your teams aligned around your core strategy. So now moving on to our third approach that we've heard is really about how you can help your teams to focus quite precisely on your consumers. Now, I fully expect your response to be, that's really obvious. We've been talking about this for many, many years, and we're already doing that. However, what we found is that consumers have changed just as fundamentally as everything else has during these times of more, from their underlying purchase drivers, their category spend, to their preferred channels and their touch points. So the question to ask yourselves really is, are you segmenting in a way that is still relevant to our new tech and durable consumers? Are all the teams across your organization working from the same segmentation framework and language? Are your targeting activities aligned across marketing, product, and sales to be able to engage these audiences with more relevant products or content or communications?
Absolutely. And because of these changes that we've seen in the shopper landscape, GfK, we've taken a unique sample of over 1 million of those hard-to-find recent buyers of consumer tech and durables. From these, we've categorized 7 different profile types that really represent the whole of today's new tech and durables audience. So you can see here on the slide that we've got the 7 individual audiences that we've identified. So these include brand enthusiasts who might say, I'm not interested in reading up on the latest tech specs. I rely on brands I know to reassure me that my purchase is the right one. So really kind of passionate about that brand. Comparing that to perhaps low-value traditionals. So they might kind of say, I'll go to my favorite shops and find an inexpensive TV I like. I'm really not that picky. Because these audience profiles have been calibrated against our world-leading point of sales data, they provide instant opportunity sizing, as well as being trackable by behavior and size, which allows you to test and tailor the effectiveness of your strategic tactics with your core audience.
So that's not all that we can help you with in the consumer space. Each audience can be readily customized to your specific requirements via our kind of in-platform intuitive filters. And you can analyze these actually within, but also across countries and product groups. And this comes back to our earlier point about working smarter. It makes it a lot easier for you, our big brands, to be able to manage your diverse global portfolios with one single audience framework across your teams. So for instance, the things that all your teams can do is to understand your audience triggers. What purchase criteria is there so that you can create relevant messaging? You can know which touch points to prioritize, for instance, to really gain most visibility against the audience that you would see as being the biggest prize for you. You can identify which retail relationships to develop, and you can know the demographic profile of each audience to be able to optimize your profile-based targeting. So I think this has probably been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of those 3 areas that you can action immediately that we've been hearing with all of the time that we've spent with you, our clients. Now, hopefully you can go and set up your teams for success, regardless of the market turbulence. We have shown you maybe about 1% of everything that we can do to support you here. And we are improving GfK Neuron with updates every single week. So I do want to leave you with one piece of news. We at GfK Neuron so far have kind of designed with our tech and durable manufacturers and brands in mind. But this week we've launched GfK Neuron for retail. So in that version, both the data and the dashboard visualizations have been crafted specifically for the needs of our retailers, helping you two to work smarter, to gather your teams around a core strategy, and to get closer to your consumers. Now, we're currently in the process of rolling this out to our clients, so a really big thank you to all our teams, and also to all of you, our clients, who have worked alongside us to make sure this proposition truly meets your needs. And we really can't wait for you to try it out.
Absolutely, we're really excited about that one. So that's all from us today. If you'd like to know more about anything that we've presented, please do get in touch with either one of us to discuss specific questions, or you can request a tailored demonstration of the GfK Neuron products and the speed at which they can deliver answers for you. Thanks.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Greg Williams, and I'm joined by Jens Stromness from Expert to discuss how retailers can navigate turmoil. So Jens, terrific to have you with us today. Really interested to get your thoughts on sort of various topics. But the first one I think I'd really like to get into is the obvious question around the massive changes that we've seen over the past couple of years. Obviously, there's an ongoing geopolitical situation as well as COVID having impacted us. So I'm really curious to get your sense of what the big trends are that you've seen in consumer behavior over the past 2 years, and which of these shifts that we've seen, which are going to be permanent and which are going to diminish and disappear over time.
I think, Greg, that a lot of the changes that we've seen, and we've really seen a lot of changes, are going to be permanent. I think from a consumer perspective, we've seen a much bigger acceptance of technology, and we've seen new demographics accepting technology. So think grandparents suddenly FaceTiming their grandchildren, consumers accepting contactless payment, cashless payment to a much larger extent than in the past. I think also this has led to higher kind of online shares in transactions, in purchasing, that people are buying more online, but also that people are more actively using online tools as a part of their customer journey, so things like pre-purchase research, etc. And another one that is maybe less directly only on consumer behavior but impacting it, but is something that I think we see that a lot of us are focusing a lot on the things that are close to us. So be that kind of our families, our homes, our local communities, that these have really gotten a lot more focus than in the past. And in our case, we have a lot of stores that are rooted in local communities, and this is something that a trend that we see as a real opportunity for us as well.
Yeah, it was interesting during the pandemic. I was doing sort of a conversation with people at Google, and they were talking to me a little bit about what they were seeing in terms of search, and localization really was just such a massive topic. People were looking to consume services and products from local stores, and there was a real sense in which I think that the end of the city has been much discussed. I don't necessarily agree with that, the city centre, I mean. But I also think that there is clearly now this kind of spreading out of neighbourhoods into sort of very vital kind of communities. And that, I don't think that trend's going to go away. I remember doing a story a few years ago about the future of retail. And I spoke to the biggest supermarket chain in the UK, and I also spoke to luxury goods manufacturers, amongst many other luxury goods retailers, I should say. And everyone used the same word. Everyone used the word omnichannel. I'm really intrigued to know, from your perspective, what that means for Expert and how data really plays into that.
I think the first thing is really, what do we mean by omnichannel, because everyone seems to have their own take on it. When we talk about omnichannel in our organization, we really talk about how we align physical retail to all the digital tools that we have to give the consumer one holistic experience based on their wants and their needs. So that's really what we strive for, this kind of more holistic approach across all different touch points, whether they're physical or whether they're digital. As an organization, though, with a kind of heritage and a history in physical retail, where a lot of the stores are also operated by independent retailers, I see that a big part of the conversation as well is about highlighting the opportunities that omnichannel transformation is for physical retail as well. For us, it's not only about, or not even primarily about, selling as much as possible online. It's also a lot about how do we guide the consumer through the journey? How do we enable pre-purchase research? How do we inform them of services and solutions we're offering? How do we provide them information with where we are when we're open, etc., how they can contact us? But also that when omnichannel is well implemented and we have consumers in store, that we engage with them, that we are selling products that we might not have on the rack because we have access to them through good omnichannel solutions, be that when consumers choose click and collect as a delivery option, that we engage with the consumer, use that conversation to upsell, sell additional services and products, etc., and really just kind of develop the relationship with the consumer that way.
And I'm interested also, I mean, obviously a lot of electronics are commodity purchases, right? So you can, buy the same, whatever it is, washing machine from a number of different retailers. But presumably there are still also electronics products that are so high touch that consumers, they don't want to buy them online. They might do the kind of like the pre-purchase research, as you say, and maybe there'll be an engagement in terms of kind of like, whittling down, if you like, the kind of products they might be interested in. But presumably there's also a real place for that physical interaction in store with a salesperson, a real kind of sense of kind of, learning and communication going on.
I think there are differences between markets here on online purchasing behavior. Of course, Europe isn't Europe. There are massive differences between North, Central and South. But what we typically see is it's exactly what you're saying, Greg, that there are certain products where many consumers, and the majority of consumers, prefer to buy in store, typically when it's larger investments. And I think there's two main reasons behind that. One is the wish to, as I say, talk to somebody, to get guidance on the enormous selection there is and the possibilities there are, but not only related to the products. If we talk about big appliances or big TVs, delivery, installation, taking care of the old one you have at home is a factor that people often want to talk about in store. And the second thing is the experience piece. If you're investing in a new high-end TV, you want to see the quality of the screen you're buying in a demonstration. When you're replacing your fridge, we all tend to want to kind of slam the door when we visit the store to get a perception and a feel for the product that we're buying. So I think this is something that we continue to see for some products. But even for more commoditized products, when we do research, when we ask consumers and look at data on their behavior, we see that a lot of consumers also want to buy commodity items in store, very often just linked with convenience, that they can pick it off the shelf and take it home straight away.
That's interesting. So just let's dig into that a little bit. Like, what are you seeing in the data generally when it comes to that sense of, you know, what consumers are after when they come in store?
Well, it's sometimes difficult to measure, though, to kind of bridge what did the consumers do online before visiting the store. I mean, apart from just through conversation. But what we are seeing, as I said, is that typically, of course, more convenience items, smaller items, things that you replace, but it's a low emotional involvement in the purchasing. So, say your hand mixer in the kitchen is breaking, or your toaster or your kettle, it's a low involvement purchase. A lot of people replace these regularly and will do so online. Whereas if it's something that is more going to be key to your everyday at home, or something where you might hope for an improvement of your kind of day-to-day flow, or convenience-driven things, like you're replacing your washing machine and you're more interested in learning of what happened since 10 years ago when you last replaced your washing machine, that you really seek more detailed information. And that's where I think that human conversation with sales staff also plays a bigger role than on a more commoditized item.
That's such an interesting observation, because consumers clearly now are so well informed. They've done their research. They look at ratings, they look at rankings. They come into sort of stores, I imagine, really with a kind of a degree of expertise that maybe they didn't have in the past. And certainly when people are searching online, they have access to, pretty much all the information that we've ever, human beings have ever created. And what we're seeing, I think, in so many digital products, obviously, is personalization. You only have to look at something like healthcare, a product like a fitness tracking app, or some kind of like a smartwatch. So I think this kind of degree of personalization in terms of our experiences, whether that's in retail, or whether that's frankly with fintech or banking, those kinds of products and services are becoming more and more important to people. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this trend towards personalization. How can we kind of best adapt popular products and services to the needs of individuals from your perspective?
Well, I think you need to know who you're dealing with, right, in terms of the customer. And when we talk about personalization, of course, there's a lot of data-related talk. So how does AI and machine learning, et cetera, help us process the amount of data that we have access through today, typically transactional data and loyalty programs, et cetera, but also online behavior of consumers. So it's very often a digitalized discussion. What I think will help us tremendously in our industry in the future is that more and more of the products we're selling are IoT enabled, right? So they're connected to the internet. And that enables also user data to be extracted from your smart TV, from your dishwasher, that again will enable more of a customized proposition, be that reminding you of when a service is needed, be that on supplying you with consumables like detergent, etc. And here I think we'll see a big difference. Today, though, this data is only accessed by the manufacturer of the product. The European Union is working on initiatives to give consumers the choice of who they give access, and I believe that as retailers, if we can get access with the consent of the consumer to this data, we're able to personalize to a much larger extent. But I have maybe one additional thought, because these discussions on personalizations tend to be extremely data-driven, and that's going to develop and be even more important for us in the future. But if you think to your own personal life or personalized experiences, think of an experience of visiting a 5-star hotel or kind of a star restaurant, where you have a person that is listening to you, that is reading your wish off your lips, so to speak, and that's using their experience and intuition to tailor the experience ongoingly to you. And I think when we talk about personalization and what we spoke about before, Greg, about local stores and where you might know people, it's in your local community, I think this personal service as a part of personalization is something that we sometimes overlook, and I think that's something that might play a bigger role also in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that kind of touches on trust as well, because I think that we all want personalized, products, we want personalized services. But as you said, there has to be this idea of consent, and it has to be, always driven by the consumer and their needs. Going back to that kind of physical store aspect, staff in store, how best to kind of give them the data that they need to serve customers?
I think this is one of the big challenges we have as retail, certainly when I look at Europe in terms of data protection in Europe and how consumers respond to this, is that when consumers are engaging with us digitally, we have a very comprehensive set of data that we can immediately use. So if I look at some of our retail affiliates in countries where they have very well-developed customer loyalty programs, consumer apps, etc., we know all the different touch points on how the consumer, what they're looking at, what they bought in the past, what tends to trigger a purchase. We see when they scan QR codes in store to get more information. We know what products they're looking at. But what is challenging today is to bridge that knowledge when a consumer, like most consumers, are sometimes buying online and sometimes in store, that we identify that consumer in store, because today typically it tends to happen at the checkout at the till when a customer is purchasing. So I think this is where all of us, certainly from a European perspective, might be different in China, for instance, where tools are utilized differently, but where we have a challenge on kind of using that data, because to use the data, you need to have identified the customer that is physically in your store. There is, of course, an opportunity for learning from general data, which is not then the ultimate personalization, but using data in staff training to teach staff that, okay, consumers that are typically responding to those kind of products also have an interest in other products, so they should be approached with that proposition, or learning from general behavior data. But I don't know if you see good examples in other industries of how this kind of like online, offline consumer data is being bridged well.
Well, I think that you raised the point of China. I think that China is a super interesting example, because obviously there's a very different relationship between sort of privacy and the amount of data that people are willing to give up within China compared to Europe or the US. And we see use of sort of facial recognition technology. We see AI being employed to kind of predict the way that people will move around stores and look at the way that their eyes are, where they're looking on shelves, so we can kind of see exactly the kind of goods that they're looking at. We've also seen really interesting sort of work, some of it coming out of the MIT Media Lab, around sort of like what they call emotional AI. So kind of using cameras to scan people's faces and understand their emotions, and that's being deployed. It has been deployed by both brands, but also by people who are trying to sending out political messages to understand how people feel in that moment when a certain message is given. So I think that we have to, again, you raised the point around IoT and consumer consent and privacy. These are probably not technologies that are going to be widely deployed in Europe. But I think that what's interesting is that some consumers do want that kind of personalization. They do want that kind of sense of brands and platforms understanding what it is that they're looking for. So kind of like balancing that with privacy is going to be a really sort of challenging sort of a real interesting challenge for many brands and for platforms, certainly. I want to move on to another challenge now, Jens. We're hearing so much about this now. Every day I pick up the Financial Times, and there's another story related to supply chains and the challenge around supply chains across so many industries. So I want to get a sense for you on how reliant the the electronics industry is on access to the right components, right?
Or the manufacturers that we work with, that whose products we're retailing, I mean, tremendously so, of course. And I mean, what we've seen, like everyone over the last 2 years, is that literally the smallest component in the product can be the one that brings everything to a halt. So in terms of supply chain, massively challenging, although improving slightly right now. But what we're seeing in our industry, if you look at household appliances, for instance, there's still a lot of production in Europe. But also they have been tremendously affected because components are coming from everywhere. So what I think that we will be seeing more of, and it's been a hot discussion topic talking to our suppliers, is really about how their suppliers of components are moving production closer to production sites to be able to have a more seamless component planning and to have less challenges. I mean, if you think of Intel, for instance, pledging huge investments in manufacturing in Europe to support not only the electronics industry and household appliances, but also car manufacturers, etc., and other companies like Intel, I think this is something that we'll see a lot in our sector, maybe more than kind of reshoring of production itself, is that where production is onshore, that component manufacturing is more kind of being centered around it.
Jens, I think that's such a great point. Clearly, you know, the electronics industry is kind of underpinned by really a need for quite scarce resources. And we're seeing a kind of a movement towards different kinds of products designed in different ways as a response to this, thinking about sort of sustainability and other issues. And there's obviously a new kind of approach to design coming about, which is, you know, modular design, so we can kind of plug components in rather than replacing entire devices. There's this right to repair movement, consumers, you know, wanting access to be able to repair devices rather than replace them. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that and whether you feel that there is this kind of real shift in the way that we think about how kind of electronics operate in terms of are replacing them so regularly?
I think the shift is coming very fast, and it's one of the biggest topics of discussion, whether it is when we talk to you know, legislators or when we talk to our suppliers and within our own group. We believe that repair will be more important in the future, both from a legislative point of view, that you're able and willing to offer your consumer side service, but also as a consumer request, we're well set up, given that we have a historic focus on installation and technical capabilities. We have a huge network able to do it. I think big change we'll see is what you mentioned as well. How are products designed by the manufacturers with repairability and upgrading in mind from the very beginning? So be that about more conscious decisions around components, be that about shared components across products so that you're able to repair in a pragmatically speaking way. But one of the things that I think we've seen little of so far in our industry, but that we're beginning to see in electric vehicles, for instance, think of how Tesla kind of revolutionized the use of upgrades, of software upgrades to optimize the use of the hardware. Be that on kind of like adjusting range, driving range on your car, adding features and capabilities that give you as a consumer a better experience. And I think that these possibilities to remotely upgrade and change products is something that we will see more of in the future, but that we're so far seeing a bit less of in our industry.
So it's so interesting you talk about Tesla, Jens. I mean, we are obviously seeing this massive, very, very quick shift from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric. And clearly that is one of the trends that is going to, you know, that is going to be ongoing. We're never going back to, you know, petrol and diesel vehicles. What kind of an impact do you think that's going to have on the electronics industry?
I think what we've seen already is that many of the suppliers of our products have now also become huge suppliers of technology to the vehicle industry, to the extent that if you think back, Greg, to CES in 2020, Sony unveiled an electric vehicle study of their own to showcase their capabilities. So I think that it does kind of like blur the landscape a little bit in terms of supply of electronics, but it's also a huge opportunity, I think. Because we more and more surround ourselves with smart and intelligent devices. So, I mean, now it's also then the car, it's already your phone, it's your TV, it's more and more of household appliances when we spoke about Internet of Things before, that are smart as well. And I think that both the challenge but also the huge opportunity is how we kind of like combine those and improve how different products are talking to each other to support our consumers, to give them a better every day and to enable them to be supported in the best possible way.
Let's continue with that theme of the future. So I'm going to ask you to sort of like gaze into your crystal ball, Jens, if that's okay. Let's look ahead 10 years. Give us a sense of what you think the retail landscape is going to look like.
I think it's never been more difficult to look into the future than right now. But I think if you look into the future, I think the kind of digital advancements that we're seeing and that have been accelerated also over the last 2 years, I think they will just continue. I think in terms of the digital touch points we have with our consumers, it will be different. As I said, with the access to data, not only from transactions, but also from the use of the products in the future, will change retail quite a lot. It will enable a lot of platform-related businesses, collaborations that we're not seeing today, shift from, in our case, very often just selling the product to also selling services and consumables for the consumer to use throughout the lifetime of the product. I think though omnichannel will be the standard. I believe in physical retail also for the future. I believe we might have less physical stores. I believe that the stores of the future will need to be very focused on how they serve their consumer, whether it's then focused around convenience, whether it's focused around experience, but that they serve a very, very clear focus that cannot be duplicated online, but that kind of like underpins this entire omnichannel approach to retail.
Well, Jens, we'll have to get together in 10 years to see, if your predictions were right. But it's been fascinating chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you, Greg.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Bova. I'm the Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce. I'm thrilled to be with you here today to talk about growth is a thinking game. Before we get started, I want to ground ourselves in a sort of concept of having a beginner's mind. So many of us have been doing a lot of what we do every day for a long time, which means we're a little bit set in our ways. We think we might know the answer to challenges that we face tomorrow with things we did yesterday. It's not the way we do it here. We tried it once, it failed. Those kinds of comments really hold companies back in being able to weather what may be coming towards us in the future. We really have to have a beginner's mind, being open to what the possibilities might bring us, even if it's a little uncomfortable. Ultimately, failure is your friend. Figuring out ways to work through challenges in new ways means you have this beginner's mind. You've moved away from having a fixed mindset and you're more open to ways to grow. When you think about growth today, outthinking the competition is where it's at. You might not be able to outspend, outmarket, outmaneuver from a product development standpoint, but you can outthink. The way to begin looking at the same challenges in new ways is a concept called jobs to be done. Theodore Levitt came up with this many, many decades ago. People don't want quarter-inch drills. They want quarter-inch holes. So what is it you're selling? Are you selling the drill? Are you selling the drill bit? Or are you selling the quarter-inch hole? I would argue that we don't all want quarter-inch holes on our walls. We actually want to hang shelves or build desks or fix our car, or do something where the outcome is something of value to us. If you can ground yourself in that kind of thinking, every time you sit with a customer, you need to understand that the job to be done remains constant over time. Having access to data has always been a need, but the way in which we access that data, the solution is what changes over time. In this little image, you can see, look, I'm trying to invite you over to dinner 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, might have been smoke signals. Hey, come over to my village and have dinner with me and my family. Today, I can invite you to dinner with a text message. I can say something in my phone or my watch, and I can send it off to you to invite you for dinner. The job to be done was inviting you to dinner. The solution in which we actually use today is what changes. So it's not that the jobs are novel, it's the solutions that are new. We don't sell these big solutions. We really sell change. Change is hard for organizations. Think back to what I just said about having a beginner's mind. That requires us to be comfortable with change. Selling change requires us to take a pause and understand what are the goals of our company? What are the goals of our customer? And how do we align those in a way that is a win-win for both? Building a modern growth company requires us to think differently about how we use digital. That digital imperative has now hit a moment of truth. Over the past 2.5 years, we've seen digital come to the forefront for so many more businesses around the globe. Some SMBs got online for the very first time. Like 35% of small businesses had no online presence before the pandemic. So people are learning how to use digital. But make no mistake, customers will remember the experience they have with a brand much longer than the price that they paid. Just think about that for a moment. If you went to a really nice restaurant for dinner and the food was spectacular, but the service was terrible, would you go back? If the food was good and the service was spectacular, would you go back? Would you remember the price you paid when the service was bad and the food was really good? Maybe so. Ultimately, we as consumers are now bringing this experience economy into everything we do, both in our business and professional lives, as well as into our personal lives. And the reason why is because 80% of customers feel the experience a company provides is as important as the products or services that it sells. Imagine that. If you're a product-led company, know that you need to figure out how to shift to a customer-led company. If your customers are product-led and you want them to get to customer-led, they have to understand what customers are actually looking for. Because customers, 66% of them, expect companies to understand their unique needs and expectations. Ultimately, your customers want you to know them in real time, in a personalized way. They want you to know what they want. They want you to add value. The way you can add value is in a predictive way, thinking about what they may want next from you. Once again, all of this is grounded in data. Data for data's sake is not that interesting. You can collect all the data you want, but if you don't analyze it and use those insights to change the business, then it was for naught. Think about, the statement of data is the new oil. While I agree with that statement, you can't pull up to an oil rig and fill your car. It has to go through a refinery, and that refinery is AI, analytics, machine learning. And the petrol that powers the business is the insights. That's what you can put in your car. It's a 3-step process. So collect the data, analyze the data, use the data. Why? Remember that previous stat. Customers want you to know them. They want to feel you understand what they need from you, and they want you to add value at each touch point. Now, using that data from a marketing perspective is a great way to set yourself up and set your customers up for success. But we also have to reimagine the way in which we sell. I have to say, we don't have a technology problem. We have a people process problem. Now, I realize I work at Salesforce. That sounds a little funny, but technology can do so much for us today. It's predictive, it's analytic, it's got machine learning, we've got bots, we've got intelligence that are supporting our employees to sell better. But yet, we have so much technology coming at our sellers and our customers and ultimately our entire ecosystem. Yet only some of it is integrated, which means you are putting stress on your sellers in such a way that they're actually not spending very much time selling. 66% of a seller's time is spent on non-selling activities. If you're listening to this and you're a salesperson, you're probably going, oh, yes, it might even be higher. That is because the processes, the organizational structure underneath isn't supporting you. The technology can help you do all the things I just described. But if the processes don't align to that, there's no way to use that data in the right way. If you don't have access to it, ultimately the customer is going to feel that pain. And so the marketing department using that data to help you be smarter in your selling role. Unfortunately, 33% of marketers are only completely satisfied, right? So it means that 60 something percent are not satisfied with the use of data to create more relevant customer experiences. And sometimes that falls in the lap of the sales teams. We're meant to take a lead, have that data and have that information, action that lead with the next best activity that will help the customer move down that sales cycle. But if we don't have the right data, we don't have access to that information, we don't know what the next best action is, we're unable to really deliver that compelling experience that customers are looking for. And the number one reason is because of data hygiene and the quality of that data. Looking at first party, second party, third party data, partnering with organizations that can help actually streamline the collection and analysis of that data goes a long way to help companies reach their goals. Right? What you sell and what you do should be all about helping your customers do what they want to do. And the number of data sources is not reducing, right? Once again, we don't have the technology problem. We really have this people process problem in understanding how do we find a way forward with this new power couple of human and tech, not tech alone, not human alone. What are the ways in which we can get the human and the technology to work together? The future scenarios are super exciting to me. What if advanced data science could help every sales organization to find opportunities and turn them into faster revenue? I'd say that would be a good thing. 39% of sales organizations have actually implemented AI-based opportunity intelligence systems. Once again, helping your sellers reduce the time on non-selling, finding ways in which you can advance a deal with not always having this high touch human intervention. We have to find ways in which we can augment those transactional, repetitive tasks we put on the laps of our sellers and our marketers, and also our customer success and customer service agencies, to really be able to use that data in a way that helps us forward the organization from a revenue and growth perspective. The next is, what if AI could dramatically augment the skills of productivity of every seller? AI and human selling combined helps prospective qualified leads, accelerate contract negotiation, have predictive renewals. Actually, just-in-time relationship coaching is a great topic. Like, you've got a seller who's stuck, and then AI realizes the deal has been sitting for an unusually long period of time, pushing that seller or pushing that marketer with the ability to learn something very quickly, to change the way they respond and reach back out to the customer. It's a great way to use data and analytics and intelligence to help behavior changes of your sales and marketing team. And then really revenue ideation. What does the forecast look like? What does the pipeline look like? How do we get better at understanding what's happening in the business when it comes to growth? And the last is, what if we could focus less on next quarter's quotas and more on delivering better outcomes and customer values? Let the quotas take care of themselves. With the greater intelligence comes greater freedom to focus on those value and the jobs to be done and the outcomes and the solutions that we've invested so much time and energy in creating. We want to give our customers the time and space to use that intelligence, to use that data, to use that technology in ways to further their growth and their organization. And high performers are rethinking how you actually align this revenue and quota with the value that we're delivering to customers ultimately. Remember, do they want the drill bit, the quarter-inch hole, or do they actually want a shelf on the wall? I'd argue they want a shelf on the wall. So don't get caught focusing too heavily on the job to be done, and really hone in on what is that solution? Where is the value add? How can you improve their business while at the same time setting yours up for success? So the final thought is this: what will you do differently? What will you do differently based on what you've heard here today? Will you present new information to your customer with a job to be done mindset? Will you look at it as human and tech and not be worried that technology may be replacing roles? Will you think about the data as a conduit to getting to those insights? the insights that will really power the business forward. You have to make sure you look at it in its totality. If you look at it individually, you will leave opportunity on the table. Remember, growth is a thinking game. So whatever you do, I hope you've learned something new that's challenged the way you think. Go out there and try it. Be bold. Try something new. Don't be worried unless, I often say, if it's illegal or it's going to hurt somebody, obviously don't do it. But do it, try, even if you fail, use it as a learning opportunity. So the next time you try it a little differently, you will find the rhythm in starting to shift your mindset from being very fixed to the way you're doing it today to having a beginner's mind and looking forward to the future. So if you'd like to have additional information, I've got some new research out. You can see here the experience equation, the experience advantage. I've got a podcast called What's Next with Tiffany Bova on all the podcast platforms, which you can listen to great interviews that I've got with amazing people from around the globe that I get the wonderful pleasure of meeting and speaking with. And then I've got a book, Growth IQ. It's become a Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's translated in 9 languages. She's sort of making her way around the world. So I hope you've enjoyed Growth is a Thinking Game. Once again, my name is Tiffany Bova. I'm the Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce. Thank you so much for spending time with me here today.
Well, wow. Thank you, Tiffany. That was an amazing presentation. Not much time left, so everything that is left for me to do is to thank the speakers. First, I think the presentations were amazing, so I hope you found them as inspiring as I did. And thank you all for attending these events. We put a lot of love into them, and they are very important to us to connect the community and really help our clients and partners thrive in 2022. Hopefully see you soon in one of our upcoming global or regional events. Until then, please let us know your feedback. And if you have any questions, please get in touch. Speak soon.